If the joint meeting of Metro North and Long Island Railroad committees could come to order, please. Are there any public speakers, Mr. Gans?
Yes, we have 4 public speakers who are signed up. We ask them to address agenda items and to limit their comments to 2 minutes. The first speaker is Orrin Getz.
It because now it's working, and seeing what's going on there, and it's a matter of major concern. First thing is there was a concern about having the positive train control ready on time to meet the December 31st, 2018 deadline. And the executive director has told us that they're going to meet the deadline, but nobody knows exactly how. And not only does New Jersey Transit have to take care of its equipment and get it equipped for positive train control, but it has to take care of Metro North's equipment that operates west of Hudson. And the only thing we know is they're running tests right now on the Morrison-Essex line. And it is a major concern because the federal government is concerned that they may not make that goal. Another thing is the mechanical reliability of the trains. Comparing Metro North and Long Island Railroad to New Jersey Transit trains break down far more than the trains on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North. Their mean distance between failure is very low in comparison. And this means that a lot of equipment is out of service right now. It's at the Meadows Maintenance Complex awaiting repair. As a result, some of our trains are short cars. For example, the Metro North Express trains on the Pascack Valley line are supposed to run with 4 cars, and many times they're running with 3 cars. There was a backlog at the Meadows Maintenance Complex, and we don't know how long that's going to be, and we have no information from New Jersey Transit on when they're going to catch up with the backlog and repair all that equipment so we can have full consists. There's also a shortage of personnel, I think I've mentioned this before, to operate the trains on New Jersey Transit. At the meeting, last meeting, Executive Director Santoro said they're putting 7 engineers through the schools. It's like an 18-month program. I can't see how they're ever going to have enough engineers. And what I'm kind of recommending is possibly Metro North seeing if some of its crews can be qualified to operate on the Port Jervis line. So if in an emergency, you can send some people over there and keep your trains running, because New Jersey Transit has some big problems of hiring people, and we have seen nothing on how they're going to get out of this hole. Thank you.
Our next speaker is, I believe it's H.P. Schroer.
Good morning. I'm a neophyte at this, so please forgive me. I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. My name is H.P. Schroer. I live in Manhattan, and I happen to be a veteran of World War II. When I travel on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North and go on the city subways, I get a discount. I get a discount not because I'm a veteran, but because I'm a senior. And what I'm proposing to you, I want to change that. And you, I understand, have the power to do it. It doesn't require any legislation, and you have methods of implementing it now. What I'm proposing is that you offer veterans of any age and their spouses the same discount as you give seniors. Shouldn't service to the country be given the same respect as someone who gets a discount because of their age? I'm including the veteran spouse because they certainly made sacrifices while their better halves were serving the country. I know we were all trying to encourage public transportation, and by doing so, we create less cars on the highways. Less cars means less pollution. Think of the billions of dollars that we now spend treating asthma and other medical conditions because of pollution. This is one way. I'm not saying it's the solution. I'm just saying this is one way of reducing the number of cars on the road. I've approached the bus lines in Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester County, and they have this proposal under consideration. Of course, they'll act if you act. I have received endorsement from city and state elected officials. The Department of Veterans Services in New York endorses it, as well as veteran organizations and the public. The interesting thing is everybody has asked me, if it's such a great idea, why don't we have it now? I can't answer that, but you can. And the question I ask, is it because this is the first time that someone has placed it before you? Or was it presented and rejected? And if so, what was the basis for rejection?
Sir, can you just wrap up your remarks? If you can conclude.
Well,
thank you.
Is this an interchange? There's no exchange?
No, there is no interchange, and we ask speakers to keep to 2 minutes, so thank you, sir.
All across the country, people thank veterans for their service. Here's an opportunity for the MTA to become the first transit agency in the country to fulfill a moral obligation to veterans by honoring their service with a proposed veterans discount. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Omar Vera.
Good morning, MTA Joint LIRR Metro North Committee. Welcome back. It's the first time speaking at the joint meeting since June of last year, June of 16. But now let's get down to business, shall we? Since we're in a joint meeting, I would like to recommend to, I also mentioned the LIRR, but I need to also mention this to Metro North. Any stations within New York City that are like any commuter rail stations within New York City that that have like directional platforms with that are bound for Manhattan, like they're within New York City, should just say Manhattan, not to New York, because if you're in New York City, you already are in the city, so it doesn't make sense to say to New York when you're within New York. It's just Manhattan to Manhattan. Okay, and second, for Metro North, I'd like to recommend that the Hudson line, that they be like a diversion across the west of Hudson, like build a bridge across the Hudson River, not far from the Tappan Zee Bridge, where you can at least connect west of Hudson with the east of Hudson lines. Therefore, it's provide more efficiency and a more interconnected system. Because it's, the west of Hudson, unfortunately, because their only service is through New Jersey Transit, the Metro North lines in Hoboken, the commutes are very long, and by building the bridge, you'll at least shorten the commute to Midtown Manhattan, instead of having to take the path across underneath the Hudson River to Manhattan. So yeah, that's it. And then third and final for the LIRR, I mentioned this again, like last year. Please install new joint LIRR AirTrain tickets at Atlantic Terminal. That's like the second main terminal of the LIRR after Penn Station. And last but not least, thanks for investing in more new commuter rail cars. That is really needed. And last and finally, let's all work together as a team. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
My wife and I returned from Paris and Berlin last night at 10 o'clock. It was my wife's birthday present for 45 years of marriage. We rode every conceivable public transportation while we were there. I wonder how many of the board members have been to Berlin and Paris recently to see how they do things. But this morning, I'm here to recommend that you immediately replace both the president of the Long Island Railroad and Metro North for cause, which I have documented in emails to you. They're illegal, as in not legal actions, warrant their immediate replacement. Also, I recommend that the chair of the Metro North Committee and the chair of the Long Island Railroad Committee be immediately replaced as well for their failure to oversee the illegal actions of the presidents. This is serious charges. I'm on television. I'm prepared to back it up under oath. This has gone on, these illegal actions have gone on long enough, and the message that they say is everybody else can get away with it because we're getting away with it. This is the time to change what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker, correct? You have the minutes of the prior meetings in your book. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Those in favor? Minutes are approved. Are there any changes to the work plans?
There are no changes to the Metro North work plan.
No changes to Long Island work plan.
Thank you. In that case, could we start with the Metro North reports?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. First thing I'd like to talk about a little bit. Can you hear me? It's working? No, you can't hear? Not working? How about that? Better? Okay, thanks. As part of National Customer Service Week, Metro North held an event in Vanderbilt Hall a couple weeks back to honor 16 of our employees who are engaged in excellent customer service. This is the second time that Metro North has held an event to commemorate National Customer Service Week, just to reinforce the importance of customer service at all levels of the organization in terms of how everybody does their job every day. Couple points about service reliability. Service reliability during the month of September was above goal at 93.5. Year to date, we're also above goal at 94.1. Hudson Line operated at 89.7, Harlem at 96.3, and New Haven at 93.6 for the month. The Hudson Line on-time performance was a bit off because of required track maintenance work in the off-peak. West of Hudson operated at 96.4 for the month of September. The availability of New Jersey Transit engineers improved slightly from the summer months, and as a result, the number of canceled trains, which was 5 during the month, was reduced to 0.3%. To support required infrastructure improvements and rock slope remediation work, off-peak busing continues on the Port Jervis and Pascack Valley lines. Fleet availability during the month of September was also good, with a compliance rate of 99.3%. Service disruptions caused the Consus compliance rate on the New Haven to be slightly below goal during the peak periods. And during August, our MDBF was very near goal at almost 200,000 miles. New schedules for the Port Jervis and Pascack Valley line take effect on Sunday, October 29th. Minor changes to look for include on the Port Jervis line, the 3:19 p.m. weekday train from Middletown, town of Wallkill, will see its connection time at Secaucus Junction to Penn reduced from 16 minutes to 8 minutes, which results in a trip to Penn Station, New York that is 8 minutes faster. On the Pascack Valley line, the 5:58 p.m. weekday train from Hoboken operates 3 minutes later at all stations due to its connection from Penn, New York, operating 7 minutes later. The connection time at Secaucus Junction is reduced from 12 minutes to 8 minutes. This will result in a 4-minute reduction in travel time from Penn Station, New York to Pascack Valley line stations. And off-peak weekday busing to accommodate the rock slope remediation work continues on the Port Jervis east of Salisbury Mills, Cornwall, through Friday, November 17th. So now we get to talk about the Yankees. Unfortunately, I do not have the chance to brief you on our special World Series service plan, but what I can brief you on is how many customers we transported over the course of the ALCS last week. So last Monday, Game 3, we carried 5,000 fans to watch the Yankees beat the Astros, which was roughly 10% of the paid game attendance. Same thing on Tuesday. We carried 4,961, which was also about 10% of the gate. And on Wednesday, we carried even more. We carried 5,451 to watch the Yankees beat the Astros for the last time, unfortunately, which was 11% of the paid game attendance. Last week's ridership is higher than any game since April 12, 2014, when 5,370 fans took Metro North to see a Yankees-Red Sox game. Average ridership to weekday games this year has been 2,600, which finally reverses the trend since 2014, when average ridership to weekday games was 2,978. So we're well positioned when they go to the World Series next year to carry a lot of riders to the game. While we're on the topic of ridership, for the month of September, preliminary numbers indicate that east of Hudson ridership was down 0.3% as compared to last September. West of Hudson data for September, we don't have that yet from NJT. While total year-to-date ridership is slightly above last year, of 0.4%, commutation ridership is a percentage point below 2016, and non-commutation ridership is 2.4% up from last year. By line, Harlem and Hudson ridership is above 2016, and New Haven line year-to-date ridership is below 2016 and below the forecast. We attribute that to a higher fare increase in the state of Connecticut, as well as lower gasoline prices. On to the topic of customer complaints. They were down 12% in September from August, but they are up from last September by a lot, by 42%. We attribute this to an increase in ways for people to reach us. People are using social media to reach us and register more complaints, and this is a trend we've seen in the past, so we're tracking it closely, obviously. Finally, on Friday, November 10th, we are having our annual Veterans Day commemoration. It's 11 a.m. on the main concourse of GCT. We hang a traditional ceremonial wreath commemorating Veterans Day. It's a very moving ceremony, so I would encourage all the board to attend if they're at all possible. I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to our HR team in terms of our veterans hiring. As of September 30th, 6% of our new hires this year are veterans, and in total 9% of our workforce are veterans. Our talent acquisition team works closely with MTA's Director of Veterans Recruitment as part of our ongoing efforts to attract and hire more veterans into the Metro North workforce. And while we're on the topic of HR, I'm pleased to announce that Alfred J. Torres has joined Metro North as its his Vice President of Human Resources and Training. Al, can you stand up and wave a little bit? Al started last week. He comes to Metro North from Verizon Communications, where he served most recently as the Vice President of HR and a business partner for corporate and new product and technology. In that position, he led a team of 102 individuals and oversaw a budget of $20 million, supporting 48,000 employees. Al graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Columbia and has a Master's of Business Administration from the William E. Simon School of Business at the University of Rochester. But I do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work, professionalism, and commitment of Yvonne Hill-Donald, who served in the role as Acting Vice President of HR and Training after Catherine Beatrice Gendel retired back in May. I want to thank Yvonne for capably juggling the significant responsibility of both her current position and the Vice President's position for the past 4 months. And I want to inform the committee that in recognition of her status as a senior leader at Metro North, and the ever-expanding nature of her responsibilities, her title has been changed to Director of Human Resources. So, Yvonne, can you stand up and wave as well? That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
My thanks to Yvonne, and welcome to Mr. Torres. Questions,
I just
please.
wanted to note that the west of Hudson ridership is going to be down for these couple of months because of the work going on both places.
Yeah. Other questions? I'd like to thank you for working with New Jersey Transit to see that more of our trains are running. Mr. Vonasek, safety report.
Good morning. The safety report begins on page 38. The customer accident rate continues to trend downward and is nearly 34% lower than the previous 12 months. The employee lost time injury rate is up about 16% versus the previous 12 months. Our two biggest drivers to continue to be overexertion and slip, trips, and falls. Situational awareness is the primary cause of many of these incidents. To address this, we are focusing on engaging our employees at the beginning of their shifts. We have also partnered with our labor groups to roll out various situational awareness campaigns. Grade crossing incidents, derailments, and collisions remain unchanged for this month's report. And finally, our community outreach program TRACS has reached nearly 45,000 for the month through July. This concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Vidiel.
Justin, not related to the report, but we had spoken last month about potentially looking at the mile markings along the rail lines. I just want to keep that on the radar if that hasn't happened, to make sure we do that at some point.
Yes, sir. We've had some discussions with the MTA PD. We're trying to find something alternative to putting additional markers on the right-of-way. We're looking at some training opportunities, possibly some aids that they could carry with them at all times, so they'll know, like, if you see a street, this is the closest milepost, things of that nature to help them along.
Okay.
So we are working on it with them.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sir.
Any additional questions? In that case, may we have the Long Island Railroad report, please?
Thank you and good morning. I want to report this morning on a project that just took place this weekend, and that was the replacement of the Post Avenue Bridge in the village of Westbury. The bridge was 103 years old, and you approved a design-build contract last November for the replacement of this bridge. The contract was awarded. As I said, it was design-build. The replacement bridge was built in our parking lot, immediately adjacent to the existing bridge. The existing bridge had a history of bridge strikes by overheight vehicles, the most recent being just October 5th, when a truckload of frozen bagels became wedged under the bridge. The governor said bagels, so you argue with him. But it occurred around the clock this past weekend, and the work to replace the bridge was a unique construction method that the contractor, Halmar International, undertook. It was one in which the contractor went in with a remote-controlled lifting device, transporter, that was moved underneath of the existing bridge. The existing bridge was cut away from its connection to the abutments. The entire bridge, or the bridge in its entirety, was lifted up and transported by this device into the parking lot. And the new bridge was picked up in its entirety and transported into place over the roadway. In between, the contractor went in and had to modify the abutments to support the new bridge height. The project was one, again, that had to be done in a 52-hour period. I'm happy to report that the project actually finished early. About 1 o'clock in the morning this morning, it was completed. It was a success. It was a success due to the amount of planning that went into this. I want to thank all of our project management team. I want to thank the Halmar International team. And I want to thank our force account forces, because we had to do a substantial amount of work to remove the existing track and restore the track to its new elevation leading up to and into the bridge. And when the old bridge resisted removal a little bit on Saturday morning and we started falling behind schedule a little bit, it was our forces who were able to jump in and recover the lost schedule and actually move the project forward. So it was a great example of how to do a bridge. This is on our main line, so it was a critical location. I can tell you from someone who rides at a station just inbound of Westbury and have sometimes wondered why my train hasn't arrived, and it's because a truck has struck the bridge. It is a great service improvement to our riders out there. Second thing, I want to talk a little bit about other work that we're doing going forward. And when I say that, you know, we do a lot of work around the clock on night times and weekends. And in this past summer, when Amtrak had to do their work around the clock, including peak periods in Penn Station, we indicated to you that that was not all the work that they needed to do in Penn Station, and much more work would continue for a period of about a year. But most of that work would be done at night times and on weekends, and that work has continued. It is scheduled going forward. You've heard Jono or Michael before him come in many times and tell you about track outages needed to progress the East Side Access Project. They also are critical to the completion of those jobs. We also have the Moynihan Station being built over top of the track in Penns, and they need access to the tracks. So we have all these, and of course Long Island Railroad has its own track work programs and signal improvement programs and projects like that that require track outages. So there is a tremendous amount of work scheduled going forward on night times and weekends. We've avoided the peaks, but we have scheduled a tremendous amount of work in nights and weekends. This past weekend, we had to cut significant service on the weekend in order to accomplish this Post Avenue Bridge, and also to do an important part of the signal testing for the eventual cutover of the Harold Interlocking, the new Harold Interlocking at East Side Access. That is the second of 6 weekends that we need to do testing in there. We have 4 more scheduled. So there's a lot of work scheduled. It's important to know that it'll continue. We are very much concentrating our efforts on night times and weekends, and we're doing everything we can to what I call piggyback the various projects, so that when East Side Access has an outage, that Long Island Railroad or Amtrak can work in a coordinated effort so that an outage with reduced service is used to its maximum extent to get all the work done. And for example, this past weekend when we were doing the bridge replacement at Post Avenue, our maintenance forces were doing work on the outage area elsewhere outside the project limits to take advantage of that outage. And it's an important concept that we need to keep pushing. I promised you last month that I would get back to you on ridership, and from the context of what happened in September following the reduction that we saw during the Amtrak work over the course of the summer. If you remember, we saw between 1.5% and 2% reduction in overall ridership in July and August as we did the Amtrak project. The ridership in September was 0.1% below last September, which is consistent with the 4 months leading up to the summertime. I am happy to report that despite the summer, despite the leveling out of our ridership in the period before and afterwards, year to date, we are still up only slightly at 0.2%. But the ridership in January and February was very, very good, and that is carrying the day at this point in time in terms of our ridership gains. Final, I want to bring up a couple pictures for you because we had an important milestone this month. There is a CPOC meeting this afternoon, and at CPOC, one of the projects that will be reported upon is the M9 project. And we had a milestone achieved with the M9 project. Hopefully I can show it to you. There we go. And that is the shipping of the first 4 pilot cars. There are 14 pilot cars. They're being loaded onto a ship in Japan. They're being shipped to ultimately the AR test track in Pueblo, Colorado. So it is a milestone. We're getting those. There will be additional shipments as we go forward. A total of 8 of them will go to Pueblo for testing. The other 6 pilot cars will be delivered to Long Island, and we will conduct concurrent testing. But it is a good milestone to see this project moving forward. And that ends my remarks.
Questions? No questions? In that case, we'll have the safety report, please.
Good morning. Our safety report can be found on page 206 in your book, and that's our safety performance through the month of August. Our customer injury rate continues to be lower by about 9% over the same period 2 years prior, and our employee lost time injury rate is up 12% over that period. Slips, trips, and falls and material handling continue to be the activities that generate the most employee injury reports, and the majority of injuries continue to be soft tissue injuries. In September at our Safety Focus Day, as well as through a series of safety, health, and wellness events that were held on various tours of duty in different locations for a 2-week period, we focused on those two phenomenon and activities and prevention and awareness for our employees. In addition, our MTA Police Partnership for Community Outreach and Education reached almost 68,000 participants through the end of August. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? You guys are easy today, so far. Could we have the capital construction report?
Madam Chair, I'm going to be giving a more detailed report on Eastside Access at CPOC, so with your indulgence, I'll pass at this time. We have a few procurements, though.
You're all aware that we will be having a detailed Eastside Access report in CPOC, and I hope you can be there. I had a question for you. Last meeting, Commissioner Mordler asked about a chip in escalators. Were you able to get back to him?
I was. The question that Commissioner Mordler posed was whether the escalator technology for maintenance and operations that Schindler had installed in Eastside Access was proprietary, out of concern that we would be forced to use them as for future maintenance, and the answer is it is not. So that was good news, and interestingly, it's to the credit of the folks who did the procurement, because routinely in the private sector there is a proprietary arrangement for maintenance of those kinds of escalators. So somebody did it advantageously in the procurement.
Hats off to procurement. I think we're at the police report now, please.
Year-to-date system-wide, we continue to do well. For the month of September, throughout the entire system, major felonies were down 50%, and year-to-date, major felonies are down 15%. For the Long Island Railroad, we did even better. Major felonies in Long Island Railroad for the month of September are down 67%, but year-to-date, they're down 20%. For the Long Island Railroad, our main problem continues to be grand larcenies. Even though they're down 23% year-to-date, it is our largest problem on the Long Island Railroad system. And again, we come back to unattended packages, sleeping passengers, and other issues regarding use of credit cards by people that are unauthorized to use them. Metro North major felonies are down 33% for the month of September and 13% year-to-date. Metro North, our largest problem continues to be grand larceny autos, with 8 cars taken year-to-date versus 3 last year. And just as an update, the search continues for that 1999 Chrysler Sebring. The owner hopes we never find. Last meeting, significant issues were brought up regarding the 125th Street station, and we've made some significant inroads in that regard. First and foremost, we were able to contact Mr. Angel Mescane of Community Board 11. Community Board 11 can help us dramatically getting access to some of the other city services, including the sanitation department, fire safety department, etc. In fact, he was nice enough to include us in their monthly public safety and transportation committee meetings, which are held on the first Tuesday of each month. But in addition to the Community Board 11, we've been working with our good friends in the Metro North Safety and Security Department in installing new lighting up there, and also some cameras on the outside, so that if the officers happen to be inside, they can still view what's going on the outside. We're also working with the NYPD's 125th Street Task Force, which includes officers from the precinct, Transit District 4, and the Crisis Outreach Unit, to address the homelessness along 125th Street. New fencing should be going up shortly in some of the areas where the homeless set up their encampments, in order to block them from reaching those locations. They are chronic locations which really don't belong open and accessible to the general public. Finally, we reached out to Mr. Robert Condon, the medical director at Mount Sinai Treatment Center, to encourage his clients receiving methadone treatments not to loiter around the station. And if they get too many complaints about the same individual, they're going to refer that individual to a different clinic so that they're not a habitual problem around the 125th Street station. Another issue that was brought up at the last meeting involved the Poughkeepsie station. And I believe that the Poughkeepsie station has been moved up in the remediation and improvement schedule involving the Metro North improvement programs. One of the largest problems we're having out in the eastern region has to do with the Narcan saves. Now, although Narcan is a very valuable tool and has saved many individuals, we have 80 Narcan saves so far, the majority of them being in Jamaica Station and in Penn Station. Narcan is a wonderful tool that our officers have, and I think we've been able to save many people, but unfortunately we've been saving some of the people 2 and 3 times. So we're working with the local methadone clinic, and I'm hoping to get in touch with the Department of Health, the City Department of Health, in addressing this serious problem. Any questions?
Thank you for your report. Yes, Mr. Vitiello.
Chief, first of all, thank you for what is happening in Poughkeepsie. You know, there's certainly some work left to do, as there probably always will be, but I think we're seeing a real improvement, and that's appreciated. Related to the Narcan, one thing that I'm hearing that I wouldn't expect you to have an answer for today, but maybe we can look into is, I'm hearing there are so many Narcan saves sometimes that the officers don't have any more Narcan left, that they're only getting, I believe they get 2 doses issued to them, if I'm not mistaken. And particularly if you're assigned to an outlying zone, like up in Dutchess or Putnam, it can take time to get your doses replenished. And there are governmental bodies and departments that are willing to share the Narcan with our officers. However, for, I imagine, liability reasons, we won't let them accept those doses from another agency. Can we look into, is there a way to either find a more expeditious way to replace those, or give them more doses, or make some interdepartmental agreements so that they can get, you know, it would seem a terrible tragedy to have somebody, an officer, face a situation where he has no doses left but needs it because he's administered so many doses.
You're right when you say that our officers only carried a limited amount. They carry many other items on their belt, and we do not accept it from other agencies because we don't know what they use. However, when they do show up, including local fire departments and ambulances, we do allow them to administer the Narcan.
Yeah, the problem being, I think once you use your 2 doses, if you're in an an upstate, for instance, in my area, you're assigned to an upstate area, to replenish those 2 doses can take a while because you need to come down to, I forget where they go get them.
You're correct. It does take time to get them replenished.
So they may end up for a number of days with no doses. And that fire department, it could be too late by the time they get there. We're often there in the present. So if there's a way to look into, is there some way to do that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions of Chief McGrann? You know, I think I would be remiss in not acknowledging the significant decrease in the larger crimes that you've managed to achieve. We've been focused on the issues that we see as we travel the system, and I'm aware that some of the so-called lesser crimes seem to be increasing, like criminal mischief and graffiti and harassment. We appreciate that you are now focusing on those, and we want to acknowledge the decrease in the felonies that you've achieved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Information items, please.
There are 4 information items this morning. The first is the MTA Homeless Outreach Report, which will be delivered by Cynthia Wilson.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Cynthia Wilson, Assistant Director of MTA Homeless Outreach. MTA Homeless Outreach provides data on our program twice per year, October and April. The last update was given to the board was in April 2017. Our contract with Bowery Residence Committee, BRC, for outreach is primarily for stations in New York City, GCT, Penn Station, and Jamaica Station. This presentation reflects that. Prior to 1992, homeless outreach on MTA property was dealt purely through police action. In 1992, MTA began taking a different approach, contracting with social service entities to help provide alternative resources for homeless people. Although homeless outreach is not our core competency, MTA invests a lot of effort, and with the expertise of BRC, we believe that this program has value. There's a well-established team effort, partnership, and collaboration with outreach providers, stakeholders, and MTA PD, working to get the homeless people the help that they need. There is enhanced communication and coordination between stakeholders that include MTA Long Island Railroad and Metro North employees, MTA PD, Amtrak PD, New Jersey Transit, NYPD Transit Bureaus, and NYPD Crisis Outreach Unit. Through these efforts, we share best practices. MTA issued an RFP for a new provider. That contract is going to the Finance Committee for approval and then to the board if approved by Finance. The railroads also have separate contracts to serve communities outside New York City. BRC was awarded a contract for the northern counties of Metro North. Services for the underserved provides outreach for Long Island Railroad in Nassau and Suffolk counties. In 2011 first quarter, pen counts were typically 175 to 200 per night. Currently, the count is a little over 100. During cold weather emergencies and the governor's executive order, we concentrate on a list of vulnerable clients who we check on and monitor during the cold weather. We also work in conjunction with the city's protocol during cold blue. This past summer, the clinical team identified 10 chronically homeless, service-resistant individuals at Penn and GCT, 6 and 4 respectively, for focused intervention. With overall census numbers generally lower during the warmer season, BRC sought to provide more intensive case management and follow-up. There was a 60% success rate at Penn and a 25% success rate at GCT. I'm going to read a case vignette. This is a summary of services. In December 2016, A.D. Jr. and his mother, C.F., were encountered in Penn Station, panhandling and sleeping by BRC Homeless Outreach. Mr. A.D. Jr., 22 years old, was observed to be confined to a wheelchair and unable to articulate when engaged. It was learned that he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Ms. C.F. stated that she was his mother and caregiver and that they had been living together in the Auburn family residence but left due to a broken elevator and their unit being too far from the restroom. She reported on multiple occasions that she would bring Mr. A.D. Jr. to the Adult Family Intake Center so that they could be reassigned and declined BRC's offer of transportation. However, she and Mr. A.D. Jr. were observed laid out in Penn Station more than once by overnight outreach teams. MTA PD had also engaged with these individuals and expressed concern. Mr. A.D. Jr. presented as unable to care for himself and appeared to be undernourished, inappropriately clothed, and unable to toilet without assistance. A CARES check revealed that Ms. C.F. had a previous record of domestic violence against Mr. A.D. Jr. She presented with a history of substance use and is believed that she was Mr. A.D.'s representative payee for Social Security benefits. On December 28, 2016, BRC Deputy Director Brian Moriarty and Homeless Outreach Assistant Director Lizette Serrano spoke with Ms. C.F., expressed their concerns for Mr. A.D. Jr.'s well-being, and strongly encouraged her to accept transportation back to their assigned residence, or ADFIC, which is the Adult Family Intake Center. A contingency was established stipulating that if they did not accept one of these options and were again observed in Penn Station, Mr. Ady Jr. would be brought to a hospital for evaluation of his welfare. Ms. CF stated that she understood and that they would be returning to their residence that evening. However, December 29, 2016, Homeless Outreach Clinical Supervisor Nicholas Urban again observed Mr. Ady Jr. and Ms. CF in Penn Station. In collaboration with MTA PD, the Homeless Outreach Clinical Supervisor initiated an involuntary 958 removal and rode with Mr. Ady Jr. and Ms. CF in the ambulance to Bellevue Hospital. Upon arrival, Mr. Ady Jr. was brought to the Pediatric Emergency Department for evaluation. In collaboration with BRC's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Angela Kedzer, the Homeless Outreach Clinical Supervisor advocated for his admission to the hospital. After extensive assessment and negotiation, Bellevue agreed to admit Mr. Ady Jr. as he was unable to care for himself in the community and an appropriate facility for discharge could not be identified. BRC then offered a bed at the reception safe haven to Ms. CF, which she accepted. The Homeless Outreach Clinical Supervisor and an outreach team escorted Ms. CF to reception and ensured that she completed the intake process. In the weeks that followed, Ms. CF left reception and it was reported that her visits to Mr. Ady Jr. were few and inconsistent. Bellevue and the Homeless Outreach Clinical Supervisor collaborated with the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities on Mr. Ady Jr.'s case, and follow-up was ongoing throughout January and February. With the assistance of the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, Mr. Ady Jr. was discharged from Bellevue on March 7th into adult foster care in the Bronx. The Bellevue social worker reported that the transition went smoothly. Mr. Ady Jr. is doing well and that he has a good relationship with his foster parent. It is believed that Ms. CF is aware of this development, but her current whereabouts are unknown and does not appear that she has visited Mr. Ady Jr. since his discharge. To help the homeless people in need, you can always contact me directly. However, for immediate assistance and an immediate response, contact MTA PD, terminal and station employees. You can dial 311 or use the city's 311 app, or dial BRC's Homeless Helpline at 212-533-5151. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Questions of Ms. Wilson? Continuing.
The second information item is the preliminary operating budget for both railroads. They were presented at the July MTA Board meeting and they're available on the MTA website. The item appears on the agenda to provide the opportunity for public comment. The third information item is the status update on PTC. That report will be presented at CPOC this afternoon, but if anybody has any questions now, because the report is in the book, staff is here to answer them.
I think it's best done later when we've got all the detailed information out. I think it's important we talk about the data and facts.
Yeah.
Of course.
One question on that, and I don't know the answer, which is why I'm going to ask the question. What happens if Metro North complies with PTC, which we assume it will do under our guidance, and New Jersey Transit does not? What happens?
This is an issue that we're obviously very sensitive to because of the fact that New Jersey Transit is a contract operator for us west of Hudson. I should say that we work extremely closely with New Jersey Transit on these issues. We had a meeting with their PTC staff last week. They are confident that they too will be compliant on the Pascack Valley and the Port Jervis lines. So we will continue to work with them between now and December 31st of 2018 to ensure that that is in fact the case. They are, as I said, they are a contract operator. They are the host railroad west of Hudson. So we will work with them very closely so that we have the requisite degree of confidence that they too will be in compliance in terms of all the PTC mandates by the end of 2018. John,
Can
know-
I add something to
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
The-
according to recent
I'm-
newspaper.
Would you wait a minute?
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
have something to add. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have been concerned about the responsibility. Apparently, the plan for PTC west of Hudson is New Jersey Transit's plan,
Right.
not ours. Nonetheless, I had asked Acting President Rinaldi to provide us with interim steps so we have some assurance that they will be in compliance and our passengers will be adequately protected. Sorry, go ahead.
Recently, they had last week, they're going to start testing on the Morristown line soon, so there's hopefully some sign of good progress there. But I also am concerned.
Thank you.
The final information item, as Pat indicated, is the project update on the M9 procurement, which will also be presented at CPOC, but we can obviously, or Pat can obviously answer any questions if there are any at this meeting.
Questions? Then let's do the Metro North information items.
The track program quarterly update is in the book, and VP of Engineering Glenn Hayden will give a brief overview, and he's available to answer any questions that you might have.
So the report starts on page 89 in your book. We're well on our way to successful completion of our program in 2017. We've installed, and these numbers are as at the end of September, about 15,000 of the 42,000 ties planned this year. Our rail vac, we go out and we replace defective concrete ties with wood ties. We put in over 3,000. That is a big number for us. We did a huge job on the mid-Harlem between Mount Vernon and Crestwood and got some speed restrictions off there. There are some photos at the end of this presentation. Rail replacement, we've done about 80%, about 8 of 10 miles. Surfacing, we are about 70% complete, and that follows our tie gangs and out-of-face surfacing as well. Switch renewal, we've put in 26 switches out of our 36 planned for 72 complete. And as you know, every winter, come December, when the ground starts to freeze, we transition our gangs and move into Grand Central Terminal for the winter program. We are on track to do that again. Grade crossing renewals is a particular pet peeve of mine. We have put in 11 of 17 thus far. We actually did one on the Upper Harlem this weekend. And if we complete our program this year, which I have every reason to believe we will have replaced 53% of all of the grade crossing surfaces on our territory within the last 5 years. Welds, another success story. We put on another additional welding gang 2 years ago. We essentially completed our yearly program at the end of September, and we're continuing. I believe we will be in excess of 2,000 welds this year for the first time in our history. LIRR rail grinder, we took advantage of some efficiencies in track outage and production. We had planned 34 miles. We actually did over 40. GCT station tracks, now that Amtrak isn't running into the station, we were able to get back onto our program. We're now working on track 32. These are very hard areas to work because the block ties are embedded in the concrete slab. So we remove worn and aged block ties. We change the bracket ties and rail, and we should be done with 32 and on to the next one, so we'll get one more track this year. In terms of our detections, Sperry Rail, we completed the first run successfully. We're about halfway through the second run. Our ENSCO geometry detectors, we did 2 years, 2 surveys, and we have contracted with them to do 6 tests over the next 3 years. I'm sure you all remember we're building our own track geometry car. It should be here by the late 2018, and then we can use that and give a lot more flexibility for where we test when. Overhead bridge program, we are well along the way to finishing it, and Of significant note, Central Avenue steel repairs on the New Haven line. We have completed the work that requires continuous track outages, so now we're working off-peaks nights, and we hope to have that one done later on this year. Bridge timbers in Connecticut. There are a lot here, and if you look about a third of the way down, you see Coscob Bridge, 850 timbers, and 3/4 of the way down, Devon Bridge, 750. We've installed about 2,000 of the 2,500 timbers we're going to put in this year, so we're well along the way, and our main big movable bridges are in very good shape again. S program in Connecticut is steel and masonry repairs. And again, we have 2 gangs working on that. We're completing them as they come up. RMMs, our state of Connecticut has an inspection consultant that comes out and continually inspects their bridges. When they detect a condition that needs immediate attention, we jump on it. And we've done about 65 repairs around the system as a result of RMMs. In the state of New York, we're about 50% on our bridge timbers. And direct fixation fasteners, we have the Park Avenue Viaduct. We had some fasteners that were failing. We have replaced 29% of the overall number of fasteners on the Park Avenue Viaduct in the last 2.5 or 3 years. We have a gang that continues working there, and it's been very successful. In Grand Central Terminal, we have very limited amounts of direct fixation fasteners, mostly in platform tracks and in some areas that were when north end access kind of reduced the structural depth, we had to put in some slabs. If you go to the New Haven line bridge repair, we are well along the way to finishing those. Same thing with our bridge flags. When we get a flag from New York State DOT or our own inspectors, we go out and take care of that individual item. The state of Connecticut has 2 bridges, 2 railroad bridges, Sound Beach and Tomac, which require our intervention. Our force account comes out and installs ballast retainers so they can remove a span, and we can still run trains on the adjacent track. We're 100% complete on tracks 1 and 2. They're on track. They should start on track 3, and we also have to reinstall the track and surface it once they're done with the bridge. The miscellaneous stuff, we do graffiti removal and right-of-way fences installed in response to our right-of-way task force, where we find abutters who throw debris on us or encroach on the property. We've done about 2/3 of a mile this year on right-of-way fence. In the very last picture, we've been trying very hard for right-of-way cleanup. If you look at the picture on the upper left, you'll see debris under Fleetwood platform. And on the bottom, that's track 1, just about being able to restore it to service after that project I spoke of. The 2 pictures on the right-hand side are over at CP 229, which is in Coscob, Connecticut. We had a bunch of old containers over there, which we got rid of and neatened up our right-of-way so that we're trying to accomplish production and cleanup. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Questions? Nia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hayden, you guys have clearly done a great deal of work, and I appreciate that. And I also do appreciate a couple places where you actually put the percentage so I can understand what amount of work we've done. We had a C3RS discussion prior to this meeting, and a topic related came up, and I'd love your help on it. One of the reasons we excuse me. One of the someone's playing footsie with me, apparently. Okay. We care about safety first. At least I care about safety first. I care about service second and value third. Clearly, some of the speed restrictions come from a focus on safety because, as Joe Giuletti used to tell us all the time, we had many years of maintenance to catch up on. However, service is being impacted in the sense, I'll just give my personal example. My commute used to be 1 hour and 5 minutes, and now it's 1 hour and 15 when we're on time, and we're not on time, so it's usually 1 hour and 20. I'm trying to get a sense of when this program reaches a place where we've achieved enough repair of the infrastructure, of the production ties, et cetera, where we could go back to a more, let's say, less speed restrictive environment. I look at the math and I see that we're replacing in this period 2% of the production ties, 0.5% of the rails, 2% of the switches. I'm just trying to get a sense of when do we reach a place, what date out there do we reach a place where we've caught up enough where maybe we'd see fewer number of speed restrictions on the system?
So the speed restrictions that we impose due to production are not going to go away. Whenever we put in ties, we restrict the track. Same thing with surfacing. And we're always going to be putting in ties, rail, and switches and doing welds. So maintenance is forever. However, with the sole exception of rail, I believe that in probably 3 years we'll be at what I would call like a state of good repair, steady state. We have a backlog of rail, and we are trying to expand from our about 10 miles per year up to 20 to 25. We should have a full-time rail gang next year, and if we can put in 25 miles per rail for probably 5 or 6 years, we'll have caught up with the worst of the rail, and unfortunately the rail is what drives our mud spots. So that's going to be a while coming, but we are getting a handle on it, and each year for the past 2 years we've had less speed restrictions at the end of the year than we did at the beginning of the year. So, and we're on target to do that again. So we are working on it, and we're getting there.
I appreciate that. Madam Chair, I'd ask that maybe we figure out a way of showing this, because as a board member, I'm embarrassed to say I do not know, and that Glenn says in a few years, a couple of years, we heard earlier, maybe it's 2020. So it sort of seems like in the rough sense, but I'd like a slightly more analytical viewpoint and a slightly more engineering-like Gantt chart that gives me some sense of when we're going to reach, exactly as you said, the state of good repair.
So what we can do is I can share with you a report we generated. I spoke earlier about our track geometry inspections. I can show you a graph of the number of defects found per year, and it's very, very clearly going down.
That's not exactly what I'm asking for.
We'll put our heads together and figure out how to depict the information in a way that's helpful to the committee.
Yes.
And when we find that way, I think the operative question, if you boil it down, is what would the schedule look like at the various stations if we're in a state of good repair?
No, I understand. Yeah, okay. You're concerned about the impact on service and when that might improve. So, we get that. We'll figure it out.
And the acting president and I have had a discussion that we'll have a more in-depth briefing once the information is gathered together. And I think it's going to take a little while to understand the data that we're provided.
No, I think when we instituted these quarterly reports, it's been a bit of a work in progress in terms of how to depict the information in a way that's helpful to you. I think the reason for instituting the reports to begin with was to give you a sense as to what's going on and how much work that we're doing. But it's been kind of a progressive process in terms of figuring out the best way to present the information. So we'll go back to the drawing board and figuring that out.
Let me just be explicit what I'm asking for and would maybe consistent. This is currently a volume of work assessment where you show us X number of ties, Y number of this and that. What I'm asking for is effectively the schedule, if you will, that says we're going to reach 100% of the stations, the rails, the ride, et cetera, by this date, and what that schedule is. Thank you.
And what the impact is on service.
That would be a nice to have, absolutely.
Yeah. And I also want to say we recognize that you have speeded up the process as it's gone on, and I'm very happy to see that. Randy.
I also agree you've done an outstanding job, but as one who uses the Hudson line quite frequently, I'm just concerned how you're going to get to 100% of the ties, and you're only at 13%. And also about the rail replace on the Port Jervis line, it's kind of low, and you don't have very much time left in the construction season. And the switches that are out there. So I mean, is this stuff going to really get done this year on Port Jervis and on Hudson line?
So on the Port Jervis, as I said, the figure shown was at the end of September. As of Friday, we've actually put in over 11,000 ties. We put in one of the 3 turnouts that we're going to do over there, and we're doing the other 2 this coming weekend. So we're actually slightly ahead of schedule on the Port Jervis. The Hudson was lagging behind because we spent the beginning of the year on the New Haven line. I think Ms. Rinaldi talked how our Hudson OTP was slightly lower. That's because my tie gang is over there now messing with things, but that's where the production is now, so we'll finish off and we'll be in good shape.
I've been on some of the trains that were delayed on the Hudson. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? We look forward to your responses to our issues. Long Island Railroad information items.
Yeah, thank you. On November 13th, we will institute our fall schedule change. And there's a couple items that are a part of that schedule change that I want to point out. And Mitch, some of these will make you happy. Okay? So the first one, only some. So the first one is we're adding some station stops to some early trains. And this is a lessons learned from the Amtrak summer. Where we made some adjustments and we said we would evaluate them, and this is one of those items that was evaluated, and we're introducing it in the November schedule change. Second item has to do with adjustments to the train schedules on the Montauk branch, and I said the schedule goes into effect November 13th, or the weekend of the 11th, 12th. It is our intention to cut over the new signal system for Spionk to Montauk. This was dark territory. This is the first time it'll be run on a signal system, and that new signal system will enable us to operate a little more efficiently out there on the branch. So it's a good news story. Third item has to do with the North Fork, and Mitch, as you know, we've been meeting with the communities out there and the elected officials. We had come up with an adjustment for the Greenport service. This was elimination of the Geordie train and retiming of a number of trains, and those changes go into effect with this schedule change in November. And the only other thing that I'll mention is, again, all the weekend work. We have a tremendous amount of work, and people really need to pay attention to our updates as we put them out as to each weekend what the service impacts will be with those changes. So,
I just want to thank Pat and his staff, Alyssa and Dave and everybody for all the work they've done on the east end of Suffolk County. Sometimes they feel like they're left behind out there, and part of it was the fact that it was dark territory for hundreds of years almost in that regard, and we've finally been able to get a signal system out there and some additional service both on the South Fork and on the North Fork, and I know there are still plans going forward to even expand, especially on the South Fork, even more than that, working with the towns of Southampton and East Hampton who have realized that the railroad cannot do it on its own. It has to be a partner with those two towns, and I'm hopeful that next year we'll be able to expand even that service there to allow for some commuter service in that area for people to get back and forth to work, which is a major issue on the South Fork. But this is a tremendous improvement into what we were able to do out there, and I look forward to it even being better in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else? We'll move on to procurements. Metro North procurements first, Al.
Okay, good morning. There are 6 procurements in this month's package totaling $124,150,666. There are 4 competitive procurements in the amount of $123,965,075. There are also 2 ratifications in the amount of $185,591. These 4 competitive procurements, which were previously presented at the September committee meeting, are part of MNR's Customer Service Initiative. In each of these award recommendations, Halmar Transportation in the amount of $30,800,000, Ford Audio Video Systems in the amount of $8,389,829, Mass Electric in the amount of $68,882,100, and Signet Electronic Systems in the amount of $15,893,146. MNR used the design-build approach each evaluating both qualification and cost. Since the last submission, M&R has added additional scope to the Mass Electric Award recommendation. 4 additional stations have been added: Poughkeepsie, Southeast, Nanuet, and Harriman, for a new total of 20 CSI stations. In addition, M&R has elected to incorporate Wi-Fi at each of these 20 locations. M&R has extensively negotiated with each of the 4 contractors recommended in this board package, discussing risk sharing, cost savings, and project approach, and have achieved what we believe will be the most cost-effective way to bring these interdependent projects to a successful conclusion. The 2 ratifications are associated with a failed bus duct at Tremont. The first ratification is for circuit breaker sales northeast in the amount of $89,741, and the second being Robert Geroso Incorporated in the amount of $95,850. These firms were provided material and labor associated with the emergency repair of the bus duct bank to support the replacement of a failed transformer at substation B7 in Tremont. The substation in Tremont is located in a highly traveled section of the railroad. The immediate repair was necessary to ensure sufficient power is available to support rail operations in the lower section of the Harlem Line. May I please have a vote for all these procurements?
Could I have a motion and a second, and then we'll discuss this? Okay. Thank you. I've got plenty. Questions? Yes.
I want to thank the staff for listening intensely to what myself and my colleague from the North and Dutchess County were discussing at our last meeting in our private sessions. It is the burden, if you will, to live on the ends of the system and pay the most and get the least. And that's something that I think the riders are frustrated by when you're spending $5,000+ a year to commute, plus parking, plus owning a car, plus then buying a subway pass to get around the city. It is a material burden. I won't suggest that living in the city is not a burden when you pay income tax, which we do not pay to the city, but it's a material burden, so I'm glad we've added that. I would say specifically, though, on page 126, I do not see a change in the listings of the stations. So unless I received an update was given to us that I do not have, at least this still reflects the same stations that were identified in last month's. I guess we fall under option 5. When I say we, I mean myself and my Poughkeepsie friends, as well as our west of Hudson. But I do not see us. Excuse me? You represent all of Metro North, just so you know.
So that's Signet, right? So
yeah, but Signet is still going to be providing the service there as well.
Signet, we didn't change the staff summary this month, but we'll do that by change order at some point down the line. So if it needs to come back to the board for approval, we'll bring it back to the board for approval. If not, we'll report it as change orders are reported. But it will be taken care of. Oh, there will be conforming changes to all the other contracts. The one that was changed was Mass Electric. There's an explicit reference in the Mass Electric staff summary to the addition of the 4 additional stations.
And that page would be what?
And that page is, I don't know, let me see.
Sir?
It is on page...
well, I'm looking at the Mass Electric one.
123.
Right, so I'm looking for the word southeast in the top, and I don't see it either.
But if you go to, maybe, so that this was probably not great drafting, but if you go to page 123...
I am on 123.
The paragraph that begins, in addition to the base work noted above, Metro North is currently developing work scopes for 4 additional stations.
Do you see it?
Yeah, it's 2 paragraphs up from the DMWB.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And then we also indicate that we're adding Wi-Fi to the scope as well. So that paragraph summarizes the changes since the last time we were all together.
Okay.
And then to the extent that we need to catch up on Signet, we'll do that by a change order. We just wanted to get this to you quickly.
Additional questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't at last month's Metro North. Maybe this was asked and answered. I don't know. Really across all of them, but Signet too. What's the plan for maintenance of this equipment? I mean, I know that in the Signet it's a 5-year maintenance term. What's our thinking about what happens after that? Would we maintain it? Would we have to contract with Signet? Could we get other people to do it? I'm just curious because we face this with equipment like this. What do we do?
Yeah, we specifically tried to address your previous comments to this fact. So like with Signet, we specifically incorporated the maintenance to have it competitively solicited, whereas the other agreements, we have options to be able to do that maintenance. However, it's our desire and belief that we'll be able to openly compete the maintenance on that material down the road, because as it's being non-proprietary.
Additional questions on any of the proposed procurements? Yes.
On the ratification on K, the substation, this isn't actually addressing the procurement itself, but it did say that a transformer was moved from, I think, North White Plains to downstate. I'm just wondering, are we going at some point buy another transformer so we do have the spare on site, or what's our plan there?
Yes, there'll be a subsequent, we're going to competitively solicit that, and you'll see that down the road where we're replacing that.
Anything else? Those in favor of moving these procurements to the board?
Aye.
Those opposed? I'd like to point out that we do not have a quorum here today, but this will go to the board. Long Island Railroad procurements?
Good morning. There are 2 items in this month's procurement package in the total amount of $90.2 million. Both items are in the competitive section. There are no items in the non-competitive section, and there are no ratifications this month. The items in the competitive section include a request for MTA Board approval to award a firm fixed price contract to Railroad Construction Company and AMCC Corp., a joint venture, in the amount of $89,859,236 to provide design-build services for the Morris Park Locomotive Shop and Employee Facility Project. The new repair shop will replace the former 125-year-old Morris Park shop. The maintenance tracks, undercar pits, and crane facilities at the former back shop were too short to accommodate the length of the current Long Island Railroad passenger locomotive fleet and all future fleets. The existing lighting was inadequate, site drainage poor, and the roof had suffered severe deterioration despite state-of-good repair efforts. In addition, maintenance parts for the cranes were no longer readily available and needed to be scavenged or handcrafted. As the damage to the shop became significant, the former back shop was demolished in 2008. The new facility will be equipped to maintain Long Island Railroad's current fleet of diesel locomotives used in revenue service and the current fleet of diesel work locomotives, and will enhance customer service by providing better locomotive reliability and on-time performance. The last item is a request for board approval to award a 2-year personal services contract in the not-to-exceed amount of $300,000 to Staples Marketing LLC, doing business as a firm, for the development and implementation of a marketing program to increase public transit usage in Nassau County through a year-long campaign, including outreach to employers for tax-free commutation benefits, car-free day Long Island, disseminate transportation-related information to targeted age groups, including college students and senior citizens, and through canvassing train stations and communities. This contract is fully funded by a 2-year federal congestion mitigation and air quality improvement grant that has been awarded to MTA to invest in projects in Nassau County to reduce air pollutants from personal transportation such as automobiles. These items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Questions, please. Mitch.
I just want to say that sometimes we do things that people don't see that are a really big deal, and Morris Park is a really big deal. Nobody sees it except for those of us who have had the benefit of going through it, and its time has come and gone a long time ago. And I'm very pleased to finally be able to see that our employees will have a modern place to maintain our trains, not where they unfortunately have to work today. So, as I said, the customers won't see it directly, but they will clearly benefit indirectly from what we're doing today. So, thank you very much. I move that item.
Motion on all of the items? No second, so they can... Any motion on the other items? Thank you. A second. Discussion on anything else on these procurements? Those moving this to the board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Kathy, we had,
Yeah, the monthly reports.
Is it capital construction?
Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops.
capital, we tried
have
to
to hear
leave you
David.
out last time, too.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. Capital Construction's procurement package this month totals $51.6 million and begins on page 141. There are no non-competitive or ratification items this month. There are 9 competitive items. We request that the Board approve the award of 8 public work contracts for miscellaneous construction services on an as-needed basis to support the East Side Access Project. These contracts are the result of responses received from an advertised competitive request for proposal for these services. MTACC received 8 proposals, and after evaluation of the proposals, recommends that all 8 proposals receive a contract. These will be $0 base contracts, and MTACC will not be obligated to commit to any minimum dollar amount, and the maximum amount is in the aggregate of $50 million. Work will be allocated on a task order basis, with competition coming from the firms under these contracts. The last item requests Board approval of a modification to the East Side Access GCT Concourse and Facilities Fit-Out Contract for the construction of a rigging frame and lifting platform to provide access to 2 Metro North transformers that otherwise would not be accessible due to the construction of the ESA concourse. At the time this contract was solicited and awarded, a suitable alternative to gain access to the transformer location had not been developed. In order not to delay the award and commencement of the work under this contract, it was decided that when a suitable alternative was developed and approved, it would be added to the contract as a modification. The total amount of this modification is $1.6 million. These items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Questions? Motion and second? Those in favor of moving to the Board? Any opposed? All the procurements will go to the Board. Now,
The Long Island and Metro North reports on operations, finance, ridership, and capital programs are in the book, and we're all here to answer any questions that you might have.
I wanted to thank you for
Questions,
putting, I
Randy?
wanted to thank you for adding the over 10 delays on the west of Hudson. Thank you.
yes.
Regarding performance, I do want to note that for 2 months running, Long Island Railroad has pretty much met goal on most of its branches, really the first time in a long time, and I think that's a very good sign. We have MDBF figures here, and it's interesting to note how the Long Island Railroad's M7 fleet is doing better than Metro North's fleet, even though on-time performance for Long Island Railroad never comes up to the level of Metro North. It's interesting. Also, our Long Island Railroad's M3 fleet does, even the goal isn't anywhere near the Metro North fleet, and I'd like to, I think I have an idea what that is. We're going to replace our M3s. Is that pretty much what reason why we're not going to, well, our performance goals for M3s aren't that high as Metro North, and I'm wondering why that is.
It's something I would just have to follow up with you. I mean, it's been a legacy type number that they've used here, and the fleet is on its backside of its life. It's not a very reliable piece of equipment at this stage. But it's served the railroads well. But
right, I'm just Metro North. I guess they're keeping theirs longer. That's why their goal is higher. I think they've invested.
We
in
did
them.
a refurbishment.
Yeah, I know.
A few years
Well,
back.
I think we're waiting for our M9s, which is far, the fleet's not that big, and in general, it really wasn't a question I really need an answer to. I think the issue with on-time performance, I don't think is a equipment related. When you look at categories of delay, I think we are in what we call engineering, and I think Commissioners Zuckerman pointed that out too. Is whether it's track or signals. And I'd like to see, in relation to that, because that's really our biggest, I think that's biggest our challenge on both railroads, I'd love to see some report or something about what we're doing to address that on Long Island Railroad level. I think Commissioner Zuckerman already asked that in the Metro North side. It'd be good to see what we're doing to address those kinds of delays, as that is one of the highest levels of delays.
okay, we can follow up.
Okay.
I'll reach out.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else to come before the committee? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Thank you.